Local journalism is in crisis, but Brady Walkinshaw believes some of its most unconventional and fiercely independent publications can still thrive. But Noisy Creek, the company he formed, isn't simply buying publications. Walkinshaw's betting that a combination of fearless local journalism, advertising, philanthropy, live events, cultural discovery, and even ticketing can build a sustainable future for community media. Hi, I'm Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P Magazine. Of course, this is our weekly vodcast series, E&P Reports, that interviews and talks about the people and issues and ideas shaping the future of news publishing. Brady, welcome to the show. I wish I had you on earlier. You've been kind of under the radar. It's so good to get you on.
It's great to be on. I was thrilled to hear from you and excited to talk about this. I'm definitely passionate about it.
So here's what I did. I did a little stalking trying to figure you out. You assembled a rapidly growing network of alternative news organizations. It started with The Stranger in Seattle. Correct me if I'm wrong. Then the Portland Mercury.
No, that's right.
And then since expanded into, well, let me get this straight, Chicago, Memphis, and you're developing a presence in Anchorage. Is that correct?
That's right. Anchorage, and we're doing some work in Montana right now, too.
It's an ambitious and provocative experiment. Can a national network preserve the independence and personality of local publications? Or does saving these institutions require changing them? We'll find out and learn more right after this.
Hello, my name is Walter Hussman. Our family has been in the news business for over 100 years. Journalism includes two parts, reporting the news and providing opinions. But in recent years, there's been too much opinion appearing in news reporting. This has eroded public trust in news reporting to the lowest level of any U.S. institution. To address this, we started a nonprofit, the Center for Integrity in News Reporting.
The Center for Integrity in News Reporting, CFINR, is on a mission to rebuild public trust in journalism, one newsroom and one classroom at a time. We champion the effort to have news organizations and journalism schools create and prominently display their own clear, concise statements of core journalistic values. Learn more by visiting the Center for Integrity and News Reporting site at cfinr.org.
All right, Brady, I've got you down as a Princeton graduate who worked at the Gates Foundation, served in the Washington legislature, and ran for U.S. Congress. Why the heck do you want to enter local news publishing?
So I grew up reading The Stranger. So The Stranger is this beloved Pulitzer Prize-winning alternative paper in Seattle. I grew up in a small town outside Seattle and grew up reading The Stranger, and it was this beacon of hope. It helped me figure out what to do. It helped me figure out who to date. It was, these alternative weekly papers, starting with The Village Voice back in 1955, have an extraordinary legacy of arts, culture, politics, edgy reporting, provocative features. For many years, these publications were the lifeblood of local communities. And my belief has been that these papers still are beloved. Communities love these things, these free distribution weeklies that are on the streets. And what I believe is that they're more relevant today than they've ever been. And I think what we're betting on is there's actually a business model that can sit behind these beloved publications that communities have loved and trusted for decades, that can really bring them back.
All right, I agree with you. Alt weeklies once controlled an amazing amount of cultural influence. They were just beacons in cities. And they also leaned to the left sometimes when the big daily leaned to the right, and they got discourse going. But a lot of them have disappeared, especially when COVID hit, because the advertisers themselves, because it was, so event driven, they're shut down. And then your distribution model of free single copies dies. What do these publications still possess today that makes them worth rebuilding? How are you going to bring up that phoenix from the ashes?
So, we started with the papers in Seattle and Portland, and I'd known the folks who'd started these papers for years. Folks like Dan Savage, the beloved sex advice columnist, Tim Keck, who actually started The Onion, moved out to Seattle in the late 80s, started this company Index, and they still own a minority share in what we're building, where it's a real partnership with them. But they actually had a business model that was working. This combination of advertising. They'd launched a live events ticketing company that serves a few hundred venues in the Pacific Northwest. This integration of live events and podcasting and this integration of things that really feed into what communities want. And I think there's two things going on here. There's people my age, I'm 42, there's people my age and older who are nostalgic for the past. Like, we grew up on these things. There's a whole other generation of young people, I would say in their late teens, 20s, who are truly nostalgic for something that they never had in the first place, which is analog content, experiences with one another. I think about these papers actually as the real social media. I mean, these are papers that make you social. You're out there reading them in a coffee shop, flipping through them. And in a time when more and more of our life is intermediated by digital technology, social platforms, and AI, I think there's going to be more of a value placed on things that are authentically human, that help you experience the places you love, that connect with people, that connect with the things that actually are what we're here for. And that, I think, is going to become even more pronounced in the future. And these publications, in some ways, were the original digital influencers. These alt weeklies were actually the things. They were the cool, hip friend who was in the know, who told you what music venue to go to. They told you who to vote for. They told you what the cool thing was happening down the street or the new restaurant opening. And I think people want that more than ever. Combined. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, but okay, let's stay then in the content area. I want to get in the business side.
Yeah.
One of the things I loved about the alternative world was their irreverence, their edginess.
Absolutely. They need to be.
Starting a discourse.
Yep.
Now, that confrontation, that personality, is that a competitive advantage, or will that, in your opinion, stunt commercial growth? Because it sounds like you really want to stay on that edge with what you're publishing.
You need it. I mean, you need this edginess. And I'll tell you what, like, literally, I mean, we're recording this on a Thursday morning, and 2 days ago, you had the primary election in Washington State, in Seattle. The Stranger, which is our publication in Seattle, remains hands down the most important political endorsement in the city. And that's, you were talking about earlier, the relationship to the more conservative dailies like the Seattle Times. The Stranger candidates who we endorsed swept the table. And I think what's interesting is that you actually have that relationship to these public. The New York Times did a great feature on us back in November of last year that was talking about how our Seattle paper was the kingmaker in local politics here. And I think that kind of thing people are looking for. And I think audiences want that mix of content that is edgy, that's provocative, that is mixed with interesting things to do and culture and music venues and live shows. But it's also connected. And this is something I've learned over the last few years. And I've spent a lot of time in media, but one of my big takeaways is that local news is really critical. And that doesn't sound like rocket science, but I do think people are craving really solid local news reporting. And I think that tenet, if you can build on that, you can layer in all sorts of things. But I really do think this kind of mix, this content mix of arts, culture, and good local news is a very, very strong mix that these alternative papers can deliver.
All right, so you're picking up these brands into a national network. So let's get into the business side now. The scale. What can you centralize in order to keep that bottom line final numbers coming through?
Yeah.
And what do you have to keep local in your mind as you build this network, sir?
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone in this industry knows that it's, you have to hustle, and it's these papers are hyper local, right? And I think that the love and the trust remains in their being hyper local. So as we build this, we talk a lot about having a publisher-led model where the publishers who are effectively, owning the P&L, they're running their local market, they're in control. And I think having that publisher-led model where you have a central system that's supporting your kind of nodes or your spokes, I think that is really critical. Editorial is kept totally independent and totally local. Publishers, totally independent, totally local. There are things you can centralize, to your point. Tech and product, HR, finance. To an extent, ad sales. Like, a lot of the ad sales, these papers have historically been very local, but I do think there are opportunities to partner with national brands who actually want print inventory. There's actually not that much cool, good print inventory anymore. And that's actually a growth business for us. I think that, and I don't think the daily papers are delivering that. That's not like a cool print inventory product anymore. But what I do think is cool is this having some awesome, cool local artist design the back page around your brand in one of these free distribution weeklies that's sitting in, 600 coffee shops around Chicago. That kind of stuff is very desirable because I think brands are searching for authentic connection.
And how about operations, layout, pagination? Are you trying to find a one print place that can run them all at once?
That's a great question. No, we're printing locally right now. But we do have an awesome creative director who's based in Seattle, and we have shifted the papers. We've just done it with Chicago. We've shifted the papers to what folks in publishing will know, but this kind of super tabloid format. And we do a very nice kind of stitch and trim on the sides. They look great. And I think what's one thing we're reinvesting in, and you mentioned Memphis, but we just brought the Memphis Flyer and Memphis Magazine, which is Memphis Magazine just celebrated its 50th anniversary. The Memphis Flyer has been around for over 30 years. We just brought them into our network. The Flyer had been a free distribution weekly for a long time. And it was published on kind of a smaller format. We are looking at doing like just what you said. We're trying to put that into that kind of super tabloid, much more colorful, much more visual forward design that we're using in other places. The other thing I'll just say that centralizes is content. So there's certain content types that could flow across your markets. Like these papers for years would always have like a best of series. We do a very popular sex survey every year in Seattle. We do our endorsements guide, right? So there are certain kinds of editorial products that could be locally adapted to the flavor of the places where they are, but we know that those drive audience. The last thing I'll say is personals. Personals, alternative, many people met the people they love in the pages of these personals, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a demand for that again. So we have an I saw you column in most of our papers. That's misconnections. We get all sorts of stuff coming in. So right. I think these kinds of things are the future.
Let's get down to the revenue side now. Your model extends beyond subscriptions and advertising. Right. You've got philanthropy, events, event discovery, ticketing through Ever Out, Bolt type tickets. Quickly walk us through this top line model that's financing what you're doing.
Yeah, so today advertising remains the main driver of revenue for the business. However, I think that the diversification into other areas is what's going to make this really succeed. Things like our live events. We have a very popular film festival in 60 cities around the US right now. Our podcasting. So we have a podcasting wing. We distribute and produce Savage Love, Dan Savage's very successful sex advice podcast. We're looking at other podcasts. We just launched a really cool podcast called Noise Complaint, where it's kind of our version of an NPR Tiny Desk, it's a music discovery podcast. We're getting bands to perform live sets in our offices and streaming those out. We're doing stuff in ticketing. Ticketing is not a huge part of our revenue today, but I think it could be in the future. The ticketing industry is, I think, ripe for change, where you have a lot of incumbent players that are extractive, that aren't good to venues, that aren't good to audiences, that aren't good to artists. And our vision is to create a much more ethical ticketing platform that actually returns value to audiences, artists, and venues. So that's stuff that we're already doing. We have that kind of piloted successfully. We moved several 100,000 tickets last year through our ticketing platform. And we're launching that in new cities later this year.
I've consulted in my days as a consultant, publications in Seattle and Portland. I would say those two markets kind of have some of the same vibe, and I hope you agree with me, but Chicago, Memphis, Anchorage, these are totally different. So when you're looking to expand your network, what are you looking for? Is it the publication itself, its heritage? Is it the market and the vibe? What attracts you to a brand to bring into the Noisy Creek world?
I think it's beloved papers that are still out there hustling and publishing. So, and I really think the future of what we're doing runs through mid-sized American cities. So places like Memphis, places like a Milwaukee or a Salt Lake City or a Reno or a Boise, places that actually have declining daily papers that are really struggling, but that there's still demand for a print paper in your community that people can open up and leaf through and advertise in and build community around and understand what to do and what's cool and who to vote for. So I think those kinds of cities, I think, are where we're most interested. I don't think it's your San Franciscos of the world. I think it's much more these cities that actually have struggling media environments, but have had beloved alternative papers that have been around for 30 plus years.
When I found out who you were and started researching you, you became my new hero. Because no, seriously, we've had on this program digital disruptors who have gone into started operations in cities that have had legacy brands, but decide to do it from the start. I inherited in 2019, a 140-year-old brand that some say had languished, some said was dead, and I had to wake it up. You understand? And bring it forward. Now I'm getting, oh, he did a great job. I respect you because you still see value in those brands. Now, let me ask you a question. Are some of them in your mind too far gone? I mean, is it?
That's a great question.
I mean, is there a point where you like, and again, I use this metaphor sometimes. It was Warren Buffett who said, I only bought a company that was a smoldering cigar that I had to breathe a little life into. When is the cigar dead, in your opinion?
That's a great, I'd actually never heard that Warren Buffett quote, but I actually think that's extremely apropos to what we're doing. I think the half-life on these, some of them it's too far gone. But that's not true everywhere. Some of them, like the examples, Anchorage, the Anchorage Press, which we're partnering to bring back right now, the Anchorage Press actually ceased publishing a couple years ago, but we're bringing that one back with these amazing entrepreneurs in Anchorage. I think there are many of them that are too far gone. However, there's a lot that are like the smoldering cigar, and there are many that are actually stronger than the smoldering cigar. There are many that are out there hustling, that are still printing weekly, that still have an advertising base, that still have audience. And I think our belief is that we can bring these brands into the next century and build out a really savvy, smart digital media company behind them, but that still leans into print. I say this a lot, that I think the future is much more analog than either the market thinks right now and that people think. And I think that opportunity, I also think, is one that we can plan to. Of course, AI will define so much of the future. And I think there will be an increasingly high value in the human experience that's connected to the real human experience and things that are created for one another. The last thing I'll say on that is that in a time when information is probably more abundant than ever, the kind of ability for print to curate what people are experiencing and help define that, I think also becomes more valuable. So that's a lot of what I think we're building into. I'm very excited to invest more in editorial. In every place we've gone, we've invested in editorial. And I think a stellar editorial product is what the success of this company will ride upon. Is can the editorial really deliver that voicey, edgy, funny, deep product that makes you laugh, cry, act, go to restaurants that are new, and so forth.
Brady Walkinshaw, founder and CEO of Noisy Creek, which I'll bet dollars to donuts you're going to hear a lot more about in the pages and online and in print of ENP. A growing network of independent local publications and related media businesses. Brady, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your thinking behind what you're doing. And promise me you'll come back as you continue to grow, and we'll keep talking up this story.
Mike, thanks so much. This was fun.